Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I am here with the first ever installment in a little series that I dreamt up a little while ago entitled Collection Reflections. What does it mean? What's Collection Reflections all about? Basically, in this series, I am going to be taking you through and showing off my complete collection from a given artist, given band. So whether that is the CDs, vinyl, cassette, merch as well, t-shirts if I've got them, whatever, etc. Anything I've got by that chosen band, I'm going to show off. So the different versions, the different formats, whatever. Why? Well, because I like to talk about metal and I like to show off my acquisitions and my collection, of course. So this series is basically just going to be me focusing on one artist at a time and just going through the albums and the material that I have. So the first band for this first ever episode of Collection Reflections is none other than one of the most legendary and important old school death metal bands. A band formed in 1988 in Stockholm, Sweden. There are a handful of bands that you can really attribute to being the pioneers in what became the Gothenburg or Swedish old school death metal sound. One of those bands was, of course, the mighty Dismember. So, alongside fellow countrymen Entombed and Carnage, this legendary band, the mighty Dismember, were one of those pioneers. Such a hugely important band in the evolution of death metal and the formation of that absolutely iconic sound and style with those massive fuzzing, thrashing riffs, HM2 pedal distortion, absolutely fantastic. And alongside Entombed, Dismember were one of the bands that really did combine that faster pace, almost thrash style music, and just give it that added aggression, that added brutality. And they have a lot of great albums in their catalogue. So I'm going to take you through the full reflection here, starting with the oldest articles. We're going to go through chronologically, of course. But this is demos, the complete demos. So this came out a number of years ago. This, however, this version is a 2020 or 2022 rather, much more recent, cassette reissue from Back on Black Records. A little bit random. Why have I got it on tape? Why, as I haven't got it on CD or vinyl. I know you can get it on both CD and vinyl formats, courtesy of Nuclear Blast Records, who have been reissuing all of Dismember's material over the last few years. But this was a complete random article that I stumbled upon. And this was a while ago. So this was in 2022, I believe, or certainly early in 2023. I found it on WH Smith Online. Odd, I know. But I was looking for something else. I can't remember what it was. And this cropped up as well. And it was $8.99. And I thought, yeah, I'm taking a chance on that. And it's a lovely little release. So it compiles 3 demos that were released prior to the debut album Like an Ever-Flowing Stream in 1991. So we get the Dismembered, The Last Blasphemies, and Reborn in Blasphemy demo recordings. Awesome stuff. This is definitely one of those releases that is much more for the fans and existing fans and those that are completionists. If you really want to delve deep and, explore and listen to all of the Dismember available, then you're definitely going to enjoy this. This is quite a fun little release, to be honest. Just demos, of course it's lo-fi, of course it sounds old school as hell, but it does sound good. Particularly enjoy the latter material, like Reborn in Blasphemy. But to be honest, all of those demos are really, really good. It's solid. It's just old school Dismember, sounding exactly like Dismembered. So that's the first article that I have. We're talking about this chronologically. And that material, of course, some of these tracks, they reappear in different format, different version on some studio albums. But of course, when we're talking about Dismember, chances are the first album that's going to come to mind for a lot of people, certainly the more casual listeners, is going to be the debut album from 1991, Like an Ever Flowing Stream. Now, this album is an absolute classic. This album I have had in this format, so this is a Willow Tip Records version, includes some bonus tracks there as well. I've had this in the collection for years. A long time I've had this in the collection, and I was put onto Dismember many years ago, and I can't remember quite where it was, but it was in a review. I remember reading it in a magazine. Some particular artist, musician, talking about the albums that were their personal favorites or the biggest influences on them, and alongside the legendary debut album Left Hand Path from Entombed, this was right up there. And I have to say, it is a fantastic album. It really is brilliant. It's very much of the time. Of course, it was one of the most prominent albums and biggest successful albums of the old school Swedish death metal scene. Sound and style, you can instantly hear that it was produced by Thomas Skogsberg at Sunlight Studios. So just show off this little insert here. So the lineup at this point featured Matti Karki, we had David on vocals, we have David Blomqvist on guitars, Robert Senbach on guitars, Richard Diamond on bass, and Fred Espy on drums. And there's a cool shot of the very young bands, very young Dismember on the inside there. Absolutely legendary album. Some of the best tracks on this one have to include the opening track, Override of the Overture, which is just fantastic. Soon to Be Dead, bringing out that kind of bit more thrash pace, but the whole thing has a real sort of darkness and a mysticism to it. The band title track, slightly extended title track, Dismembered, is an absolutely fantastic track as well. A truly legendary Dismember song. And then we've got Sickening Art and the album closer, In Death's Sleep. Again, it's kind of incorporating a little bit more of a sinister vibe, a little bit more of a darkness. It's just a huge freaking sound. It sounds massive. Those riffs are absolutely delicious, I have to say. And all round, just a fantastic album. So I haven't got this on vinyl. I haven't got the most up-to-date reissue, but I'm quite content with this particular format. So, before the next album, full length, we do have an EP. So we have a now somewhat legendary EP, Pieces, which came out in 1992, I believe. I'm getting my chronology correct. And this is a digipack format that I've had in the collection for a long time as well. It's a really nice digipack, I will say. This one is out through Regain Records. Can't say I'm familiar with Regain Records too much, but I picked this up years ago on Amazon, I think it was. This version includes some live bonus tracks, which were recorded in Stockholm by P3 Live 1993, which is cool. Nice inclusion of live material, but this is a really good EP, I will say. You know, it contains some classic tracks which feature on the Like an Overflowing Stream album, such as Soon to Be Dead. We've also got other brilliant tracks, including Torn Apart, which is a very famous track for Dismember. Then we've also got the brilliant I Wish You Hell, title track Pieces. It's just a brilliant little EP. It's solid. After that fantastic debut album, it really showed no signs of massive stylistic variation or change for Dismember. They were just kind of building on the brilliance that they had actually started with. You know, they were just building on that. I do have that in that particular stunning EP in 2 formats. I have it on vinyl as well. So this vinyl is one of the 2023 Nuclear Blast reissues. So nice colour vinyl. Lineup is the same as it was on the debut album at this point. And I'll just show this particular disc off. It's very nice indeed. Disgusting cover. I always think that's a brilliantly revolting cover. And the back cover is particularly disturbing as well. You've got Jesus on the cross, smiling. Nice. Sinister. We've got a cool insert with our lyrics. Grotesque stuff indeed. Very nice though. And then the centerpiece, kind of black and red, half and half, vinyl. Very nice. I really do like these Nuclear Blast reissues. They've done a really good job, I think. It's not quite as heavy duty vinyl as some of the other sort of more recent reissue series, such as the Merciful Fate and King Diamond series we've had from Metal Blade Records. That's a really nice reissue series. Very heavy duty vinyl in there, but still a really nice package and just a cool thing to have. A classic moment in a legendary band's discography. So then we've got Pieces from 1992, which, as I indicated, preceded the next brilliant album, probably one of, if not my favourite, Dismember albums. This is the absolutely stunning Indecent and Obscene, with its revolting album cover. Absolutely gross. This particular version here is a Nuclear Blast 2023 reissue. Very, very cool. They've put a lot of time and effort into these reissues, I feel. And they're just really nice packages. So there's a slight lineup change in the band by this point. So instead of Richard, can't remember, we've now got Richard Cabeza on bass instead. So yeah, continuity. Still got the bulk of the band there. Some interesting things that I realised from reading the back of this little booklet earlier is that the actual legendary logo, that very iconic logo, was actually produced by Nick Anderson, who's of fame as being the founding member, or one of the founding members of the legendary Entombed. And in addition to that, this album was also produced at Sunlight Studios by Thomas Skogsberg, also responsible for that legendary Left Hand Path album as well. So this album, what is so fantastic about it? Well, it's a massive wall of fuzz and distortion. It's a bloody excellent album. Some seriously good material here. Fleshless, the sinister and disgusting Skin Father, sorrow-filled, the sort of title piece, Case Obscene, absolutely brilliant. Reborn in Blasphemy, classic. Dreaming in Red, slightly longer closing track there. What I would say is very distinguishable about Dismember, distinguishes and sets them apart from a lot of the other old school death metal bands, is the sheer brilliance of the musicianship. I mean, Matty is a fantastic vocalist. He's really got an iconic vocal style. And although it's aggressive vocals, you can hear him. You can hear his lyrics at all times. But also, David Blomqvist, if that is how you pronounce his name, is a fantastic guitarist. A really talented guitarist. And it's those leads and solos that really stand out. There's that talent, that clear talent and musical ability that really does distinguish Dismember from a lot of their contemporaries as well. But I absolutely love this album. So this CD, I recently acquired it literally within the last few weeks or so. Prior to that, I had been enjoying this disgusting article. Again, this is part of the Nuclear Blast reissue series. All of the Dismember vinyls I have are of that series. So I don't have any originals or anything of that nature. But just show this one off. Again, there's our insert with lyrics. There we go, very cool. And most eye-catchingly, we've got the blood splatter red on clear vinyl. Very cool indeed. It's a really nice, detailed bit of splatter. Really does look the part though. Wonderful stuff. I would say that this is just as good as the debut album. Of course, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream is an absolutely legendary masterpiece, but I also feel that this album is too. I think that it's a brilliant continuity, just as with Pieces, there was no wavering, no deviation in terms of their brilliance. But I personally feel like they were really on a good stride with this album. Things were just going from strength to strength. And I've read a few reviews online where people have been taking a bit of a stab at it, saying that it's not quite as sophisticated as the debut. Maybe that's true, but I would say that it's a brilliant death metal album and a fantastic high point in Dismembered's catalogue. Dismember, legendary. So, on to the next album. Next album was a couple of years later, so Indecent was 1993. Next album was 1995. And this one, again, was a little bit polarizing. This is the amazing, and I think it's amazing, Massive Killing Capacity. Fantastic artwork. It's that sort of Games Workshop Warhammer looking artwork there. Absolutely brilliant. I believe the lineup was pretty much the same at this point. Yeah, continuity there. Absolutely fantastic. This is much more melodic in the old school sort of Swedish death metal style. Kind of a little bit more of that sound of early In Flames or At the Gates or Arch Enemy kind of coming through. A lot more big melodic riffs. That said, you've still got the amazing, talented leads and solos and songwritings, clear. But I think this is start to finish full of absolute belters. Another 2023 reissue from Nuclear Blast. And just show off that rather nice disc, which has the album cover on it. It's a brilliant album cover. Interestingly, I don't have any Dismember t-shirts, but I very nearly picked up a t-shirt recently which had the Massive Killing Capacity artwork on it, but unfortunately it was sold out. But what's so brilliant about this album? It sounds freaking enormous. The riffs are absolutely colossal. Again, it's produced by Thomas Skogsberg at Sunlight Studios. So it's keeping their sound. It's very much true to the style. I would say this is a lot more accessible. This is a lot more melodic than the previous two albums, which were more death metal aggression. But that said, start to finish, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. The opening track, I Saw Them Die, is monumental. It's absolutely enormous. Title track, Massive Killing Capacity, is stunning. You know, you get these massive bludgeoning riffs. On Frozen Fields, Crime Divine is brilliant. Just trying to pick out some of the key moments. We've got Collection by Blood, very melodic, very powerful. Casket Garden, which is a bit of a classic. They've got the very, very beautiful instrumental composition Nenia, or Nenia, not really sure on the pronunciation there, apologies, but that's a really nice piece. Before the slightly elongated closing track, Life and Their Shape of Sorrow. Another Shape of Sorrow, apologies. Great album, start to finish, lovely. Again, CD format and another vinyl. So cool. As soon as I saw this, all of these reissues that I've got, I basically waited until they went down in price on Amazon. And I think this one was about £14. But I freaking love that artwork. Absolutely love it. That just screams metal to me. Just show off the insert here. So again, yet more artwork. Brilliant. Cannot go wrong there. Lyrics. Awesome stuff. And of course, as they all are in this series, colour, vinyl, looking very, very cool. Sort of an orange, slightly sort of reddy tint as well. Very nice. Sunshine. Awesome stuff. Yep, really is a brilliant album. I love this one. Again, I just think these first 3 albums are of such quality. They really do. They kind of mirror, actually, in a way, the first 3 albums of the legendary Entombed. And I hate to make that comparison, but you can definitely see it. Whereas you had like the absolute outright grotesque old school brilliance of Left Hand Path. Things got a little bit more sophisticated with the second album, Clandestine. And then they went completely melodic and started to become like a death and roll band with the Wolverine Blues album. You can see that kind of comparison there. Like an Ever-Flowing Stream, maybe a little bit more sophisticated, but brutal. Then you've got the even more brutal and obscene, Indecent and Obscene, and then you've got the quite considerably more robust and melodic, Massive Killing Capacity, album number 3. So again, a personal favourite of mine. Absolutely bloody love that album. I think it's truly fantastic. So up next we have album number 4. I think I'm getting this the right way around. I believe so. This is Hate Campaign. Again, this one was quite polarising, and it does get mixed reviews. A couple of years after the brilliant Massive Killing Capacity, we have got some lineup changes here. So we've got Magnus Solgren on guitars, and we've got Charlie D'Angelo on bass. So we've had a little bit of a lineup change. Apologies if I'm murdering the pronunciation there. This is a lovely Regain Records reissue, digipack. Very nice, high quality indeed. And it's got a couple of live tracks, I believe. Can't quite remember off the top of my head, but listening to the other format more recently. So they've got Live to Hate and Unhealing Scars. But I personally really like this album. I think that it's quite underrated. I think that there's a couple of issues with this album. One being that it had 3 very tough acts to follow. You know, living up to the brilliance of those first 3 albums was no easy challenge. Quick swig on the Brooklyn there. Thirsty work, talking about metal. 3 very big, very important albums that this album had to follow. Big challenge. There's lineup changes, things have happened. That's also difficult. But I also think that one of the things that lets it down is the fact that it opens up with Suicidal Revelations, which is not a very strong opening track. It's a good track, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's any bad tracks on this album necessarily. I think the rest of the album is actually really strong. Not as strong as its predecessors though. So this, if it was just a ranking out of 4 albums, this would be number 4, unfortunately. But doesn't mean it's a bad album. We've got Questionable Ethics, Beyond Good and Evil, Patrol 17, just trying to think of the best moments, Bleeding Over, In Death's Cold Embrace, and the title track, Hate Campaign, is really good as well. I would say that it's a solid album. It's, you know, it's a good 6.5, 7 out of 10. But it's just, it had some tough competitions and tough acts to follow. But once again, we've got another vinyl version, part of that great series, Nuclear Blast reissues. This one recently dropped down to about £15 on Amazon. So I decided to take the leap, because actually I've been listening to it a lot recently, this album, and yeah, it's grown on me a lot. I feel like it definitely benefits, and that's a bit sort of cliche, but it benefits from being played loud. And some albums just, you can't listen to it quiet or quieter. Not that we should ever be listening to metal quiet, but it needs to be played a little bit louder and a few more times to really grow on you. But what a fantastic colour scheme. Again, it's that kind of yellowy orange, but with black splatter. Looks freaking cool. Really, really cool. One of the stronger colour reissues in this series, I think. Overall, as I say, not my favourite Dismember album, but I would say that it is a brilliant album and it is absolutely worthy of checking out. If you need to be convinced, I probably wouldn't go for that opening track just because it's not the strongest. I would personally advise going for Questionable Ethics is a great one. Beyond Good and Evil, Patrol 17. They're some of the strongest moments. But all round, I think it's a good album. So then we're on to the next album, which was a little bit better received. This is Death Metal. Great name for a great album. This particular version that I've got is excellent in the fact that it includes the Misanthropic EP, and we've got a track from the Death is Just the Beginning 4 compilation, Hill 112. So, very cool. We get the Misanthropic artwork on the back in the booklet there. Very cool. What would be really nice is if you could get the Misanthropic EP as a standalone vinyl reissue or CD reissue, but I think, I'll settle. I'll settle for this. I've just realised I've got my discography in the wrong order there. So this is actually album number 4. Of course it is. This album, Death Metal, followed on from the massive Killing Capacity album. Hate Campaign was actually album number 5. So even harder. Not only has Hate Campaign got to follow those amazing first 3 albums, it also has to follow another brilliant album in the form of Death Metal. So apologies. I'm sure the devoted fans were screaming at me there, but apologies. Slight technical error there. So this was album number 5. This was, again, it was Thomas Skogsberg mastering or recording. Lineup, consistent. So this was prior to the lineup change which occurred with Hate Campaign. So we've got still got Matty, David, Robert, Richard and Fred. Great album. I really like this one. I think that this is again carrying on with the very melodic sound that started with massive Killing Capacity and kind of built on that. But I do feel like this is a strong album. This is a strong, solid album. Not as great as massive Killing Capacity. However, I would say this is just as good. And this is actually the most new to me album in the Dismember catalogue. Hadn't heard this one until maybe a few months ago when I finally got hold of a copy. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's a very good album. We kick off with Of Fire, which is fantastic. Then we've got Trend Killer, which is massive. That is a brutal track. Real sledgehammer riff in there. Let the Napalm Rain. Brilliant stuff. Then we've got Live for the Fear of Pain. Killing Compassion. Bred for War. Brilliant stuff. Ceremonial Comedy and Silent Are the Watchers. A really strong album. As I say, not quite as good as Massive Killing Capacity, in my opinion. However, it is better than the album that followed it. I'd say that this is where things kind of started to crescendo, where they weren't necessarily surpassing the previous album. Things after this obviously went down just a little bit. I'm not gonna crap all over Hate Campaign because as I say, I think it's a good album. But what I would say is this album is a bit better than that. So, Death Metal, a brilliant album in my opinion. Some really key tracks there. The Misanthropic EP is very good. Very, very similar sound and style. Kind of a good continuity. I would say that some of the tracks on the Misanthropic EP, such as Mistweaver, Pagan Saviour, Shapeshifter, they are more akin to the more aggressive, kind of slightly less melodic death metal style and leanings of the earlier albums as well. But a solid one. Album number 4, in fact. Apologies again for that rookie mistake. A good one. A very good album. And this is the final vinyl article that I have. Have it on vinyl. Death Metal. This only has the album Death Metal. It doesn't have the Misanthropic tracks on it. But solid. Very nice indeed. It's got good artwork. I always feel that that's a pretty good sort of coat of arms artwork there. And actually, that's a really good live shot for the back of the album. Solid. There's our insert with our lyrics. Cool. And the lovely colour scheme. This is a really nice deep purple here. Very cool indeed. Real nice colouring there. Really looks the part. Solid. So, as I say, a good album. Not as good as maybe the first two. Certainly as good, or nearly as good as Massive Killing Capacity, but definitely better than what came after it, which, as I've already explained, is Hate Campaign. So then there's a little bit of a gap before the next album. An album, I believe this was the second CD from Dismember that I bought. This was some time ago. This is Where Iron Crosses Grow. This is a pretty solid album, I'd say. This is a Hammerheart Records copy, reissue, I believe. Or it might not have been a reissue, can't remember. It's quite a long time ago. And I'll be honest, it took me a while to really give this the time that it deserved, because it is a really good album. I think that this is Dismember right back on fine form. The Dismember of the early years, if you like. So, line up here, we've got Richard Cabeza on bass, Matti Kaki on vocals, Fred SB drums, and David Blomqvist on guitars. There's our lineup. Back together again. Sounded freaking good. And yeah, can't really fault this album. I think it's got some brilliant heavy tracks. Less of a melodic death metal album like what we had with Death Metal and Massive Killing Capacity. I'd say they've kind of looked further back and they are leaning more towards that brutal sound of the first two albums. But it really delivers the freaking goods. It's a solid album. Kicking off with Where Iron Crosses Grow. That is punishing stuff. Forged with Hate. Other particularly brilliant tracks. We've got Chasing the Serpent, Where Angels Fear to Tread. It's all about war and all that good thematic stuff. As the Coins Upon Your Eyes. Children of the Cross. As I Pull the Trigger. Fantastic. Not to overlook that stunning Dan Seagrave artwork as well. Just an initial glance. You don't even need to check the booklet. You can just tell. You know who did that. A brilliant album. A really, really strong one. Heavy as you like. Really solid album. And it's at this point that it kind of starts to pick up again. They're getting bigger sound. It sounds massive in my opinion. Really in your face, full throttle. It's fast. We've still got those amazing leads and that fantastic guitar work as well throughout. So an all-round brilliant album. And then we carry on with a succession of fantastic albums. This one is a very new one to me as well. This is the God That Never Was album. Great artwork again. Dan Seagrave there. And there's just no stopping Dismember at this point. It's just freaking heavy. Again, Nuclear Blast 2023 reissue. Hadn't heard this one until fairly recently, but we've got some brilliant tracks. Absolutely fantastic tracks. Kicking off with The God That Never Was title track, through Shadows of the Mutilated. We get a rather brilliant track called Autopsy. I don't know, maybe a nod to Chris Reifert and co. Not sure, but it's a powerful freaking number. It's a real heavy hitter. Then we've got Trail of the Dead, Into the Temple of Humiliation, Feel the Darkness, Where No Ghost is Holy. Just brilliant. Start to finish, fan-bloody-tastic. Really, really strong album. Really loving this one. Certainly a good continuation of the stylistic leanings and the sheer brutality of Where Iron Crosses Grow. Then there's one more album. The most recent album, of course, Dismember have been on hiatus or, just doing live shows for a while now. I know that there is confirmation that they are in the studio, or they are at least working on a follow-up to the most glorious Dismember self-titled album. Now this is a freaking masterpiece. Absolutely love it. 2023 reissue. This, I feel, kind of mirrors what happened with the Mighty Bolt Thrower, where you had a succession of great albums, really strong stuff. You can't say that any of these Dismember albums are weak or that they're not good. Even Hate Campaign, which I personally feel is underrated, it's still a solid album. Bolt Thrower, again, great albums, and then suddenly they come back with that final album, Those Once Loyal, and it's just the next level. You think, could it get better? Could it get better than the Fourth Crusade or For Victory, Mercenary? Yes, it can. They just surpass and just deliver some absolutely fantastic stuff. But again, this is a benchmark album in my opinion. So we have got a lineup change by this point. It's the last out, or the only album, I should say, that doesn't feature Fred Espy on drums. Instead, we've got Thomas Dawn on drums instead. Can't say I'm all that familiar with Thomas. Don't know if he's from another particular band, but solid album. Really, really strong. It's one of those albums that maybe it requires a few listens to just fully appreciate it. But Death Conquers All kicks off. Brilliant. Europa Burns, another war metal driving powerhouse of a track. Under a Blood Red Sky. Legion. Combat Fatigue. No Honor in Death. Dark Depths. Black Sun. Start to finish, this is solid. This is right up there with one of my favourite Dismember albums. I think it's such a difficult catalogue to rank. And I did actually toy with the idea of ranking the albums of Dismember, but I'm not ready for that yet. I think that's too big of a challenge, especially when we've just got such strong early albums. We've got an interesting kind of middle period, and then the most recent albums, those last three in particular, are just solid as a rock. It's just a brutal old school death metal bludgeoning. Love it. So that is actually my complete collection from the legendary Dismember. Apologies again for getting the Hate Campaign and Death Metal albums the wrong way around there in chronology. As soon as I started talking about Hate Campaign, I thought, is that right? Don't know. Easy mistake to make, I suppose. So that is my full discography. If you are new to Dismember, you've never heard the band, or maybe you've only heard a couple of bits and pieces, I would strongly recommend starting with the legendary Like an Ever-Flowing Stream, simply because it is one of those albums that's compulsory. It's an obligatory album. You need to have heard that. It's a rite of passage, but also it's just a very good album. And certainly if you like your Arch Enemy or early In Flames, if you like Carnage, if you like Entombed, but maybe you just haven't heard of Dismember, haven't heard these albums, definitely check it out. It's one to check out, and I definitely think you'll enjoy it if you enjoy those other bands and albums. Other highlights that I personally would point out, if you do like your more melodic death metal, Massive Killing Capacity is one for you, because it is strong, some great riff work there, amazing vocals. If you like your death metal more in the kind of left-hand path, aggressive, brutal, massively distorted kind of sound and style, Indecent and Obscene is an album that you absolutely need to hear. If you like your Bolt Thrower, your Memoriam, that kind of heavy-hitting, old school, but still moving with the times death metal, then absolutely you're going to need to check out these latter albums. So The God That Never Was, the album before that, Where Iron Crosses Grow, and the wonderful Dismember. So my friends, what are your thoughts and opinions on the mighty Dismember? What are your thoughts on these albums? What are your favourites? Is there any kind of period of the band and the chronology that you enjoy more than others? Maybe you're not a fan. Maybe you're going to check them out for the first time, which would be awesome. I strongly recommend it. Do let me know what you think. I'm interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others on this one, as always. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. I hope you've enjoyed this very first collection reflection. Please do feel free to comment, get some discussion going. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to like or share. It's all very much appreciated. I really do appreciate the continued support. Thanks again, my friends. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Above all, take care of yourselves and stay heavy.